Hello there and welcome to another World Cup special here on France 24. Brazil, the Samba Kings, are through to the World Cup quarterfinals after an absolutely stunning first half display. Saw them beat South Korea 4-1. Elsewhere, Croatia are through, Japan are out, and it's thanks to the lottery of the penalty shootout, with Japan missing 3 of their spot kicks. To discuss all the craziness, I'm joined by our generational football consultant, Karim Balde.
Hi, Jean-Emile.
Thanks so much for joining us, Karim. And I also have the pleasure of speaking to our sports editor, Simon Harding, who was sitting perched on top of one of those containers at Stadium 974. Obviously, it wasn't quite that, Simon, but you got to see Brazil at their fluent finest in that first half. Just how good was it from the Samba Kings?
Well, from my container, which was quite comfortable, it was an absolute joy to watch. What a fast start from Brazil, who finally showed us everything that we expect from a Brazilian side. The flair, the tricks, the speed, the smiles, the ambition, that was all there. You know, this Brazilian side came off the back of 2 really unimpressive performances against both Switzerland and Cameroon. They hadn't scored yet in the first half of the tournament, and it only took them 7 minutes. Vinicius Jr. with a wonderful goal. Neymar then tucked away what was, in my eyes, a soft penalty. But then the third goal by Richarlison, it embodied everything that we love about Brazil. You know, the close control, the precision with Thiago Silva, and then that cool finish. Lucas Paqueta with a goal in transition for the 4th as well. Brazil massively impressive and finally putting on show that striking power that is going to be so vital for them in the rest of the tournament.
That's so on point there, Simon, because you mentioned the way that they are getting those goals in, just banging them, but the real Brazilian Samba style, Karim, which we kind of lost in the era with Dunga at the helm. Now with Tite, do you think it's back?
Yes, it's back because under Dunga and before that under Luis Felipe Scolari, we see a Brazilian team with full of individualities of great players, but not a collective mindset. And with Tite as a head coach, we see that, and that's the main point. You have many great players such as Neymar, Richarlison, but he knows how to put things together to make this team working, even if in difficult moments, for example against Switzerland, he knows how to put it together. And at the end, there was a Samba today, but that was after some doubts raised by previous game. But I'm not worried at all about Brazil, because I think that they will go up to the end.
You think they're going to go up to the end? Simon, going to come back to you now. I want to talk about Neymar. He's back. He came back from injury, got his 76th goal, which puts him 1 shy of Pele's record. We'll come to Pele in just a bit, but Neymar, how important is it for him to come out of this World Cup on top for his Brazil legacy?
It's massively important for Neymar as an individual, but I do think that Neymar in a Brazil shirt is different to Neymar that we see in our everyday life with Paris Saint-Germain, where it very much is about him and he wants to be the star of the show. This time around, even when he was substituted, yes, a little bit of a frown, but he didn't make too much of a big deal about it. I think he is very much playing for the shirt, and as you mentioned, that number 10 with Pele, so important, especially with the emotional baggage that the Brazilian team has carried this week with the news that the King was in hospital. As you mentioned, I'm sure we'll touch upon that later. But for Neymar himself, what's important to notice is the performances. Against Serbia, Brazil could have and should have had 5 goals against Serbia in the first half, didn't. Neymar missed the last 2 games. Surprisingly, or unsurprisingly perhaps, Brazil didn't create as much. There was not that link between midfield and attack, which we saw in the game today. And today, lo and behold, he's back in the squad. 4 goals scored in the first half, at the heart of everything. Yes, all he did was score a penalty, but you still need to score the penalties, and he's just so key in those transitional moments between linking the play between Casemiro and Paqueta, and with the likes of Vinicius, Richarlison and Rafinha on the right.
Such a crucial link-up player there, Karim. I want to go now. Simon mentioned we're going to talk a little bit about Pele, his legacy. Of course, we do hope that he does pull through in this very delicate situation. It is delicate, but let's just have a look at Pele's World Cup record. Of course, Karim, 3 World Cups.
Yeah.
We can see the statistics there. 77 goals, 92 games, 12 in 14 World Cups. The most World Cup assists, not often mentioned.
Yeah.
And the youngest ever scorer still to be broken, that record, 17 years and 239 days. Let's just talk a little bit about the man who was Mr. World Cup for Brazil.
Everyone have heard about Pelé. We're not from that generation, obviously, but even if our parents, our grandparents talk about him, it's with like a joy in their mind, because for us, for our generations, we don't have those pictures in mind, but you just have to go on social networks, on YouTube, for example, and to watch what he did for the game back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And you just see how much he was a great player, to what extent he revolutionized the game. He destroyed opponents such as France, for example, in the World Cup back in 1958. So you see all the importance of Pelé. It's hard to imagine how much he's important in Brazil, for the Brazilian people, because he's nicknamed the king, and that's something to be nicknamed as the king. And in my opinion, Pelé is one of the best players in history, obviously, but still, we can watch his game today and say, wow, even if that was from a while ago, we were still impressed by the way he was easy on the pitch, and there were many comparisons with Mbappe, but yeah, he can destroy opponents by himself, and that's just unbelievable.
Unbelievable indeed. One player who's not quite going to match any kind of record like Pelé, but who did score a fantastic goal was Park Seong-ho right at the end of the game. Simon, you witnessed the goal. Possibly the goal of the tournament, but alas, just a little bit in vain. In vain, rather.
A little bit in vain. A little bit in vain, yes, Jean-Emile. But you got to say, Korea tried to play. They're not one of those teams, maybe like the USA, who were really disappointing. Korea were just absolutely overrun in the first half. But they tried to play football, and they were maybe a little bit naive at time. Particularly on Paqueta's fourth, where they were caught pushing men up the field. But do you know what? That's what we want to see. If there's one thing that we're left with the image of the Asian teams, because South Korea were the last Asian representation here in Qatar, and they are now out. But Japan and South Korea both showed this willingness to play football, showed this undying attitude, let's give it to the end. I think their star players perhaps didn't deliver. Heung-min Son of Tottenham without a goal in the tournament, which is going to be a massive disappointment to him. Also cut a very frustrated figure at time. But, they tried. And it'll be very interesting for them. I think it was an achievement in itself to reach the last 16 and to qualify past Uruguay and Ghana against Brazil. It was always going to be a tough ask, and when you concede a goal after 7 minutes and then you unleash the Brazilian Armada, always going to be very difficult to claw your way back in the game. But to their credit, they kept on going till the very end.
And we love that whole persistence that those Asian teams have shown. Of course, Simon, they're mentioning Japan.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that right now, Karim, because, of course, the World Cup saw its first penalty shootout of the competition so far. Croatia coming out on top over the Samurais. So close, but yet so far for Japan, who thought they had done enough after Daizen Maeda's opener. But Ivan Perisic's header for an equaliser for Croatia, and then the match finally being decided from the spot. Well, it was too much for Japan. That's a brief roundup. Let's hear from Selena Sykes for the full match report.
It's the end of the fairy tale for Japan after they've been knocked out in the cruelest of fashion by Croatia on penalties after it ended 1 apiece. It was a courageous effort by the Samurai Blue, though. It was Croatia's experience that came out on top, especially from their goalkeeper Livakovic, who is the hero of the hour after making 3 big saves in the penalty shootout. It was perhaps also a matter of the Japanese buckling under pressure with some poor spot kicks from them. Pasalic converted the winning penalty for the Croatians to take them into the quarter-finals. The Japanese were the far livelier side in the first half, with Celtic forward Maeda converting a pass from Yoshida. You could certainly tell after that one went in just before the stroke of half-time that all the neutrals in the stadium were for Japan. Croatia made it level after 55 minutes thanks to a brilliant header by Perisic. That's 10 goals for him now in major international tournaments. Neither side managed to break the deadlock after extra time, though it was the Croatians, the masters of extra time, who came out on top yet again in the World Cup in 2018. They came out on top after extra time in all of their knockout stage games except for the final against France. For Japan, they were hoping to make history here this evening and reach their first ever World Cup quarter-final, though it wasn't meant to be, though they'll be going home with their heads held high after pulling off those two memorable major upsets against Germany and Spain.
Those matches against Spain and Germany fresh in the memory, but Karim, why didn't Japan practice their penalties?
That's a good question, Jean-Emile, because when we looked at the penalty shootout at the end, they missed 3 of them, and these were poor penalties, poor shot, and they were almost the same way of shooting. I was quite surprised to see that at this level of competition, and they knew that this can arrive obviously in during the knockout stages, and Croatia is a specialist of shootouts in the World Cup 2018, in the Euro 2020, played in 2021. They always go now to the penalty shot, so they should have done some more exercise on the Japanese side. And at the end, we were disappointed. They beat Japan, they beat Spain, they beat Germany, but at the end they can't reach the next level to go to up to the quarterfinals, and that's a shame at the end for Japan.
It's such a shame because they played such an enterprising brand of football to counter-attack. Simon, Japan, how far can they go with this style of football?
Very far. They need to build. One thing that is always punishing for the Japanese is the physicality. I think they were a little bit outmuscled at times by the Croatians, particularly in the box when balls were not quite dropping to their players. But we're seeing a real evolution in Japanese football with now exporting away from the J-League, which is the Japanese Premier League, into Europe. We're seeing a lot of the team, that Japanese team, I think 7 out of the starting 11 all play in the Bundesliga, not in any of the top clubs. It's true, Borussia Dortmund or Bayern Munich, but Frankfurt, who are having an unbelievable season, Mainz as well. So a lot of talent, and I think that's the way forwards for Japan, is trying to get that export away. We've seen former World Cup winners like Iniesta go and play in Japan, but I think that's counterproductive. If you can export your young talent, like very much the way African nations do, or South American nations, to the top players in Europe, then you're certainly going to see it. South Korea have done so and have repeatedly done so with Ji-sung Park at Manchester United, Heung-min Son now at Tottenham, and that's what Japan need to do.
So there's just one more day of last 16 matches to look forward to on Tuesday, with Morocco, one of the only unbeaten teams remaining, taking on 2010 champion Spain. And then in the late game, Fernando Santos' Portugal will have a tricky task on their hands as they face off against Murat Yakin's Switzerland at the Lusail Stadium. Let's take a quick look at that game between Spain and Morocco. The North Africans are coming up against a formidable passing unit in Spain. But the Atlas Lions have so far conceded just the 1 goal to Canada. They've been praised on their defense. How good a job have they done in structuring that defense, Karim?
This is one of the main capacity of the Moroccan team, especially since Walid Regragui arrived as the head coach of Morocco in September, because they conceded only 1 goal, and that was an own goal by Naïf Aguerd against Canada. So to say that this is their strength with the captain Romain Saïss, for example, Naïf Aguerd, who plays in the Premier League at West Ham United. So yeah, they built from scratch, from the defense, from the goalkeeper as well. You shouldn't forget Yacine Bounou, who is one of the best goalkeeper in the Spanish league, in La Liga, playing in Sevilla. So you have a great goalkeeper, a great centre-back, 2 great centre-backs, and then a powerhouse in front with the return of Hakim Ziyech. We know that for a while he wasn't in the national team because he was in bad relationship with former head coach Vahid Halilhodžić. But now with Ziyech, and you see his goal, his beautiful goal against Canada, and Nasseri from Sevilla, they have everything to go forward in this World Cup. This is the last African representative at the World Cup, and we all, as African football fans and observers, we rely on Morocco to beat Spain, because Spain has shown some weaknesses, I think, in the first round, especially in the last game against Japan and even in the game against Germany.
Well, one team who also showed a weakness in their last game was Portugal against South Korea. As it so happens, Ronaldo, he stormed off in that game. Portugal, they are up again tomorrow night against Switzerland. Simon, one last question for you. Ronaldo, he stormed off against that game. How does Fernando Santos manage him going into the Swiss clash?
There is no management, and there's absolutely no question that Cristiano Ronaldo is going to start. He's simply untouchable in the Portuguese starting 11, made so by Fernando Santos himself. It's very clear that Fernando Santos has tried to play expansive football. They were slightly caught out against Ghana when Ghana scored twice. They were beaten by South Korea as well when he made substitutions. So he's going to rely on his star players. And of course, with Cristiano Ronaldo, perhaps difficult for him to come to terms, or he's not willing to come to terms with the fact that he's getting old, that his body's slowing down, then it is in a precarious position. But the man remains dangerous. It's true that he has his own personal battle with Lionel Messi ongoing for the most World Cup goals, which Lionel Messi is currently leading by 1 strike with 9-8 versus Ronaldo. So we'll see exactly how he comes up with that issue, how he deals with the issue. The Portuguese are coming up against a very, very good Swiss side. The Swiss head coach said it's possibly the best Swiss team in history, with key players all over the pitch. Akanji in defence, Granit Xhaka, Xherdan Shaqiri, Maurice Embolo is absolutely sensational as well at the top of the pitch. So it's going to be a real matchup, and I think Portugal underestimate Switzerland at their peril.
Quick prediction on the 2 game scores. Go, Karim.
Portugal, I think, will beat Switzerland. It will be tough, but I think they will do it because they have also Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva. And for the first game, I trust in Morocco.
Morocco to win it. Well, there you go. So much more football to anticipate. Goals, shocks, and glory ahead. And we'll bring you every bit of detail here on France 24. We can't wait to have you with us for more on this World Cup. It's bye for now.